What's up, Craig?
Hi, Craig. How you doing?
So what are we
How are the
talking?
kids? What are we talking about? We're talking
Yeah,
about the thing we've been doing for the past 2 weeks that I spent all day doing today that I didn't think I'd be spending all day doing today.
what is that?
Creating magic items.
Oh, for LARP or D&D?
Either or. I can talk about both.
Yeah, I mean magic item creation is definitely a dungeon master thing. So it's game mastering. It's right up our alley.
So first and foremost, do you like doing it? And if you do it, what are the scenarios in which you do it?
So I am actually a huge fan of creating my own magic items. I utilize, honestly, probably half of the magic items I hand out during my actual campaigns are, some of them are based off of actual magic items out of the book, but a lot of them, I will just make little tweaks here and there. I will give a story behind it. And a good number of them are just created from scratch just because I feel like, when you receive a magic item as a player, it's nice to get that flame tongue longsword, but it's just way cooler to get the sword of some legendary adventurer, even if the sword is nothing more than, it glows when orcs are nearby.
Okay.
Yeah, I make a lot of magic items.
So how many? So in general, for like a standard campaign, let's say it lasts about a year. How many of them are like custom or?
Truthfully, probably about a third.
Now these are full customs or just like?
I mean, there are probably a full third of the magic items that I pull that are not in the book, like that I put out. Some of them might have things in the book. So say I decided to hand out a flame tongue longsword, I'll give it a name, and then I will add another little thing to it. So, it's a flame tongue longsword that you can then cast Dispel Magic specifically for the darkness spell. Or just little things like that.
Okay.
Little tweaks. Some of my items I've put out are a little OP, but are overpowered. But the majority of them are just minor little tweaks.
What's the best one you've made in recent memory?
The most powerful one, off the top of my head, I can't even recall the name of it, but it was a +2 longsword that also allowed the wielder to take an extra attack, and it could cast haste.
Okay.
I mean, I always complain about fighters being broken just because of how many attacks they can get in 5th edition, but it was already a very high-level campaign by the point they got that, so it didn't really make a massive difference.
And what would be the most favorite one that you made?
My favorite one, once again, I'd have to look up the names of these things because I don't recall. It was a ring, and the only thing it did was the wielder, didn't matter whether they were a caster or not, could actually cast Dimension Door once per day. So not even super powerful, but just kind of a neat little thing. But I actually had an entire history crafted behind that the players, oddly enough, I ended up running a campaign where none of my players had history as a skill. Like, none of them were proficient in it. So a lot of the stuff they could have learned, they never did. But I know it. I know all the info, or at least it's all written down. So maybe someday. Your
secret info. No one's going to know.
I mean, I had it there for the players, but if you can't pass a history check, well, it is what it is.
Well, you have 2 options to solve this problem, guys. You can either murder hobo, or I have this 12-page pamphlet full of rich history for you to read. And the answer is murder hobo. All right,
murder hobo. That's what happened this past weekend. Lots of murder hoboing. Go ahead. It was it was a one-shot game, so murder hoboing is a little more likely. Plus, we're allowed to be evil.
Well, I
Don't
mean,
for people listening, don't murder hobo. Don't do it.
it's a fine line between just killing your enemies and murder hoboing.
Yep.
I don't think actually, to be fair, I don't think I've actually had a group that was straight murder hobo.
Lord knows I have.
They always get into a situation where, like, all right, I think the best solution here is violence, even if it's not the wanted solution.
Okay, so to give you more of this scenario on the murder hobo, and then we'll come back to magic items because this is an interest of mine. So, one-shot game, we're all high level anyway, and we get thrown into this scenario where we have to go find this portal. We don't know where it's at, we just know we get teleported into the general area. And we start talking to all these people. And there's obviously something messed up about the town that we're in because everybody has a smile on their face and they sort of repeat the, hi, welcome to Pete's Grove, or whatever the name of the town was. It's very just off-putting, like a 1950s sitcom. So we all knew something was messed up. So I'm walking around, investigating stuff, talking to people, but I'm also playing lawful evil. Then we have the one jackass in our party who was playing chaotic evil. After about the third person, and I didn't get any real answers out of anyone, he just starts shooting people with his bow. Murders like 3 or 4 people, and then finally we figure out what we need to do over that 20 minutes of playtime. After that, the murder hoboing stopped. So it wasn't even the whole party. It was specifically one player. And then there's always the beautiful, I'm playing my alignment. Yes. Yeah. Even
we can
chaotic
get stuck on this for hours.
Yes. Yeah, we'll that's a whole podcast of its own. We'll come back to that one.
Yeah. But was it a magic bow?
Yes, he had an Oath Seeker, of course, because it's literally the only magic bow in the player's handbook.
Is it?
I believe it is. If not, it's the only really good one.
Hey, there's plus ones and stuff. But...
Sure, yeah. I'm talking about anything. Like there might be one other one, but the Oath Seeker is the only one I can remember off the top of my head.
Yeah,
and thus the reason I make magic items.
So, I don't like making magic items. And it's not that I can't make magic items. I just find that players, if you make a magic item for a player that's not in the handbook, there's a whole logistical thing that I have to deal with in using D&D Beyond or whatever program that I'm using, at least in my more modern history of tabletop, where I have to make the custom item, import it into the program, and then get the player to find it. And with D&D Beyond, there's an option to make things public so other people can use it and see it, and you get critiques, and that's just a whole world of pain that I don't want to talk.
So what about creating magic items for a home campaign, not one online?
Well, I mean, that's the system that I use. So the example I was going to give is I did create one for my wife and her Drow priestess because there was no blessings for Lolth. Blessings, the mechanic that can occur in D&D proper, but there weren't any that actually were tailored towards Lolth.
Yeah, I think there's one magic item that's sort of tailored towards that, the tentacle mace or tentacle whip, whatever it's called, but that's literally it.
But there's those little blessings that you can receive. Now, in D&D Beyond, as a product, there's no way to give a player a blessing. You have to create a amulet that doesn't require an attunement or doesn't take up an on-magic item slot and give them that item. And they just have to understand and know that that item is there for them to use all of the blessing. And because I mainly run through, not pen and paper and use D&D Beyond for everything, I tend to find that the players forget that those things are there, in my experience.
Yeah,
so
that's probably the case.
if it doesn't show up on their stat sheet and they don't see it immediately there, they forget about it. Now, props to my wife, she hasn't forgot about it, and she's used it multiple times. The actual blessing itself was she can call upon Lolth to basically give somebody else like inspiration, in a sense. They take mental damage, and
Sounds all right.
And then they get like advantage or extra damage based on that effect. And I can pull up the actual.
So this is a custom magic item that you have made specifically because there was nothing else that fit what you needed.
Correct, and I try to keep it as balanced and in canon of the game as possible. And this is actually, it's on D&D Beyond. You can look it up. You can find it. You can use it. It is a wondrous item. It doesn't actually have a specific thing to wear. It's just a wondrous item that you just have equipped to your character. It's called the Spider Queen's Blessing. It does the following. Spider Queen's Blessing. Lolth has blessed the player with her unsettling grace and divine presence. A character retains this benefits of the blessing forever or until it is taken away by the god who granted it. Unlike a magic item, such a blessing cannot be superseded by an anti-magic field or similar effect. So, Lolth's Unsettling Grace is, as a bonus action, the player can bestow the blessing of the Spider Queen on one ally that they can see within 30 feet. The ally takes 2d6 psychic damage and gets one of the following benefits. Receives advantage on their next attack roll, receives advantage on their next skill check, can use the reaction to make one weapon attack, or can use the reaction to cast one spell cantrip. And then there's Lolth Divine Presence, which is the divine presence of Lolth emanates from you, providing you expertise in religion. Now,
so on the first one, where you had the 4 options, do they get to pick?
They get to pick, yeah.
Okay.
So the Drow Matron enemy has the same ability, the Unsettling Grace, where they can, it's actually just as simple as their ally takes 2d6 and get advantage on their attack roll. And when I was talking with another DM friend of mine, we're like, well, that's a lot of damage that a player can take. You know, it could be as low as 2, could be as much as 12. Yeah. They're at level 5. So give them more than just advantage on their next attack roll. So skill check, and then we decided maybe use the reaction because, you know, reaction is something that either gets used too much or not enough. And then I wanted to give it some kind of passive effect that matched the just the state of what the item is, and being that she's a priestess of Lolth, here's expertise in religion. So you can take your magnificent plus 5 and make it a +8. So,
I mean, it seems like a reasonable item. It definitely doesn't sound overpowered, and it's definitely within the flavor of what you're trying to do.
So here's one of the reasons why I didn't like making it. So when I first showed this to my wife, she was like, "Is that all it does?" And this is before I kind of added in some of the extra things that she could do into 2d6. She's like, I don't want to hurt my allies, and then, you know, they just get advantage. We're always getting advantage, you know. She didn't really think it was worth it. And I've had that same reaction multiple times with other players that I've had.
So what you do on that, that's just a player undervaluing something like that. So myself as a player, I like taking the just most normal, mundane items and finding creative uses for them. So, it is not super powered by any means, but just think of it this way: giving advantage, give it to the rogue. If you have a rogue in your party, rogues get sneak attack off of advantage.
Yeah.
So that's a guaranteed. Sure, the rogue might take a little bit of damage, but if you're in a situation where there's no flankers, there's no way to get advantage, bam, there's your advantage.
Yeah.
And rogues, I mean, all of their damage is based off of sneak attacks. Otherwise, you're just doing a D10 of damage or whatever.
On top of that, too, there's the whole you can make them use a reaction for free weapon attack.
Oh yeah, which is huge.
That's huge, especially in D&D with its action economy. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it was. I think she understood how good it was a little bit later. She did kill a player with it.
It happens.
She was like, okay, we have to kill this guy. I know you're low. How many hit points do you have? I have 10. All right, here. You get a free attack. Take 12 damage. Shit.
Yeah, well, adventuring is a dangerous game.
So, like, the other custom, I guess, magic item I had to make was Elisandre's, some
Elistrae.
Yeah. I had to make her singing blade because there's no singing blade in 5e. And then that led me down this rabbit hole. Okay, what kind of weapon is a singing blade? And I looked it up. Oh, they're two-handed bastard swords, or they're two-handed long swords, or they're a bastard sword. All right.
They've dropped the bastard sword, but they just made it where long swords can be single hand or double hand.
Yeah. So then I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this? Now I have to make this item. Do I make it? How do I make a requirement to use this blade? Because it's supposed to be like a dance. A dancer's supposed to be using the blade, and yet it's supposed to be always two-handed. So that's not really a mechanic that exists in 5e. So I worked on that for a while, and
whether it's a mechanic or not, you can always just write caveats into stuff. Must be wielded two-handed.
Yeah. And that's I think that's exactly what I did. I can find it here in a second.
Yeah, with the Blade Singers, like, truthfully, I don't remember off the top of my head what their stuff does. I would have just gone back to 3rd edition and looked to see what their weapons did at that point, and then maybe built something based around that.
Yeah. So yeah, I made it a longsword, weapon longsword, artifacts. It requires attunement and good alignment. You have +1 bonus to attack and damage roll. This magic weapon on hit, it deals an extra 1d6 force damage due to the sound it makes when it is swung. That's from the other editions.
Wouldn't be thunder damage.
I followed what the other editions had.
Yeah, I don't think thunder was a damage type previously.
Yeah. If the target is deaf, they do not take additional force damage. The blade is larger than a normal longsword, but is smaller than a greatsword. The sword must be wielded with 2 hands, unless the wielder has 20 strength or greater. Then they can wield the sword one-handed. That's the first sentence was from the old descriptions of the items. Mine was, hey, you have to use this two-handed unless your strength is 20. Then you can use it one-handed.
And then you get the belt of giant strength. And next thing you know, you have a blade singer dual wielding those things.
Sheath, the blade looks like a normal longsword. However, once it's in sheath, the sword sings constantly and loudly. Any creature that can hear within 30 feet of the sword can hear the sword's full song. The sword can be faintly heard up to 45 feet away. The sword song makes its wielder confident and immune to charmed, frightened, command, confusion, fear, and suggestion. Any emotion forced upon the wielder only causes rage. Focus on the one who forced the emotion. Proficiency with the longsword allows you to add your proficiency bonus attack rolls that you make with it. So, those are the only 2 custom items so far that I made with D&D 5th edition in D&D Beyond. One to serve a purpose with the actual system not having a way to add in blessings, and the other because this sword hasn't been created in an official context yet. So that's kind of my more recent magic items custom that I've made. And even though I had like all the old references to pull from, it still took me a good while to find the right balance for this item and get all the links in there and set it up, which is again why I don't like making custom magic items, because it took 6 hours to go through all this and set it all up.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Because you are running everything online, you have a lot you have to actually think about this stuff a lot more than I do. Like
Yeah.
I'm playing online right now only because of the coronavirus. Otherwise, we only meet in person and play that way. So everything can be done. I mean, most magic items I create are literally off the top of my head 5 minutes before starting game. You know, if there's a balance issue, I also made it sure during our session 0 that all of my players understand, hey, you know, if I feel that something is broken, I will change it or get rid of it. So if I hand out a magic item and, you know, 6 months later it's overpowered and I realize I've screwed up, I mean, I'll let them know. I'll give you a toned down version of it. Doing that online is more difficult for sure, because you have to make all the changes and everything, especially with like Roll20. I don't know if you've used it or not, but you can actually add in magic items. You can create them from scratch, add what they do, but you have to manually do all of that. If it's just a magic item out of the book, you can just sort of drag and drop it right into the sheet. Easy peasy.
Yeah, and that's what I want to make easy for the players that I have is, okay, we have D&D Beyond as a source. Me and my friend have put a lot of money into this, so we're going to take advantage of it. And, you know, creating even custom monsters is the same thing. You have to spend all this time finding a monster and then tooling it around to match what you want it to do the right way. And, you know, it's okay. It makes sense. It makes it easier for me. It just takes a big effort on my part to sit down there and do that. I've done a lot more with monsters, but I've also gotten better at going, okay, this is going to be a flesh golem creature. I'm not going to make a custom monster for it. I'm just going to bump up its AC to 17 and its damage with an extra attack and just roll with it from there. I don't need to create a whole extra monster for it because that's just me on my end. But for my players, I needed to have the thing on their sheet so they know what it is and they can remember it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they forget. Which brings me to
monsters are very easy. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So that brings me to the other magic item that I made back when I played 4th edition. So in 4th edition, Minotaurs were my favorite creature. A Minotaur, when it kills an adversary, they could eat the heart of the adversary and gain a trait of that adversary. Okay? So Minotaurs can't, they could see in the dark, but let's say they kill a drow and eat the drow's heart.
So they get the 120-foot vision instead of the 60-foot.
Or the mist, or the shadow step, or the shadow cloud, or something drow like the fairy fire attack. Mm-hmm. That was how they were built. And I always thought that was really cool. So I took that concept and I took it to my Minotaur player, and I was like, all right, this is the history of the Minotaurs that you know of, but you're of a clan that is not inherently evil.
Quick question. What setting was that?
Is the default 4th edition setting, Points of Light, I think it was called. Okay.
I think you mentioned that. Yeah, you mentioned it before. I had never heard of this thing before you mentioned it a couple of weeks ago.
So it's like, okay, your Minotaur clan is not an evil clan, so they're not eating hearts, but they're still collecting hearts, and you can take this and stuff it into your totem weapon, which is a custom weapon that I gave them, and in doing so, you will have different damage modifiers and different abilities for the weapon, and you as a player, because this is your totem weapon. And he put one heart into it and forgot all about it.
Naturally.
The singing sword that I made, I spent all the time finding it and setting up all the right links and everything. My group is definitely not of good alignment, so they just liked the thing. Just chucked it into the middle of Waterdeep Harbor.
That sounds familiar.
So...
yeah, my players, if they find stuff they can't use, like they just sell it off. If it's a campaign where there's some place viable to sell it, they will.
So, like I said, I don't have the best time when it comes to magic items.
Well, that was an oversight by you. It sounds like, you know, knowing that there's no good party members, giving them a good aligned item isn't gonna
I knew they wouldn't be able to use it. I knew none of them would have a change of heart. Okay, I had 2 drow that were on a mission to kill the members of the temple in the middle of Waterdeep. So yeah, I knew it was going to end the way it was going to end, and I knew they were going to lake it. But I kind of thought they were like, I don't know, destroy it, corrupt it,
rather than just chuck it in the ocean.
Like, Lolth, we brought you the blade of the High Priestess. Please bless it with your blessing and make it a weapon for me. Cool. Now I can just take what I've already made and call it like, Lolth Sting or some shit like that.
Yeah.
And just, really tool it up. No, it was literally like, what do we do with the sword? I don't know. Bloop.
Throw it in the lake.
Like, all right. Okay.
Which leads me to wonder how many magic items are sitting at the bottom of Waterdeep Harbor.
Well, at the end of that session, at least 2. Because they also laked the fighter's Iron Man-esque armor.
Sounds like it's time for somebody to play a sea elf and get rich.
Well, there's actually a dragon in the harbor.
Oh, well, okay, there you go.
Swims around, picks up all the magic items and stuff that gets left behind.
He should pop up as a shape changed, whatever. Go find the people throwing him these items and give them a boon for it.
Yeah, he was really sad because I figured it's a common magic item. It's just like as a modifier at any item where like the armor can go on and off the player as a bonus action.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of taking 4 hours to put on your armor, it takes bonus action.
Right. Yeah.
So it's Iron Man armor essentially, and he was so proud of it. He wanted it, but I'm like, they saw you in that armor. That armor is well known to the people that survived your assault on the temple. He's like, yeah, I guess we got to get rid of it.
Survivors, okay. Man, these guys are failing at murder hoboing.
Well, they left one, and he's like, okay, I'll give it to the drow, and they can take care of it. And what's the best way to take care of it? Clunk. So, yeah.
I hope he had another suit of armor.
He did not.
The heck did he do? Did he just go buy some more armor?
I think he bought some, like a breastplate or something like that, yeah.
So, actually, that leads me to an interesting thought. Do you let players craft their own items and magic or magic items?
I would. I don't know what the system would be, but I wouldn't stop them from trying to figure it out.
When 5th edition first came out, for a couple of years, there wasn't really a solid crafting system. I know they have added a lot more to it, especially with Xanathars. There's probably even more out there that I haven't really looked into. I love the idea of crafting items as a player, and I'm all for my players doing it. That being said, none of my players have ever tried to do it. Like they've never mentioned it, anything like that.
I will say with my current group, none of the PCs are set up in that lifestyle to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They are all like priestess or cleric or a fighter type that doesn't really have any skills other than stabbing people. I do have a brewmaster monk who spends all of his time making different alcohols and brews, which I let him do with varying degrees of success. And he'll be like, "Oh, can I scrape this mushroom off the zombie beholder and use that in my next brew?" Yeah,
that's going to turn out very well, I'm sure. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with brews with my sorcerer that I used to play because he owned his own bar / brothel / prostitute ring, whatever. But after a while, once we got up to Sigil, because we played this game up to 30th level, like I was able to get in touch with people who had brews from other planes of existence and so forth, and I would purchase them and then take them back to my own bar to sell. But one of them that we came across, I was only able to get a limited amount of it, but it would change your alignment to the opposite for 10 minutes. So we occasionally would have a little fun with that.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, that falls in the same vein as custom magic items, just customized with custom effects.
Yeah,
And you can just,
DM created this stuff. I had no input on it, but it was things I could purchase. So
yeah, and you can find those charts online that have like, here's a D100 table of random effects. What happens when you drink random beer you find in a closet? So
yep,
it's easy enough to always
you turn into a potted plant, just like on the wild magic table. Wild magic's another one. Like it sort of ties into creating your own magic items. It's less permanency, but creating your own tables for wild magic is something I like to do. I know the guy we play under, Johnny. When he does tables, he actually he'll have 3 different wild magic tables pulled up. He'll have the one that's in the player's handbook, and then he'll have 2 others that he has found online, so they can roll. But the guy who plays a wild magic sorcerer in our campaign kind of already knows everything on that main chart. So if it's something the DM doesn't like, he can just grab one from the other charts at that same roll number and be like, no, this is what happens. So effectively, he has like 300 choices as opposed to the regular 100 or so.
Yeah, I played a Wild Magic Sorcerer, and I think I was able to roll on the table twice in a year-long campaign.
That's where that's a little bit where it differs. Like Johnny, he requires it. If you're casting magic, you're probably rolling on that table.
Yeah, so the quicker that is that so every time you cast a spell of first level or higher, you have to roll on the magic item table.
Or you mean the wild magic? Yeah.
You have to roll to see if the wild magic procs.
Yeah.
If it procs to roll the table. So
it also does say in there that the DM can require it. So
me and him talked ahead of time. I'm like, okay, the DM can require it. The DM can say that no, you can't roll wild magic because every time you roll on the wild magic, your free advantage skill resets.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I won't abuse this, as in I won't walk outside, cast magic missiles into the air, so I have advantage on my attacks, if you let me roll the wild magic chance every single time. And he said, sure. So I rolled every single time I cast a spell of first level or higher, and I think I only got a chance to use it like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, see, getting that free advantage is nice, but sometimes you just get screwed by that table. We were in the middle of a fight, and this was like the boss fight, nasty bastard that we were trying to take down, and our sorcerer gets turned into a potted plant because he rolled on that chart. So he's pretty much out for the whole fight.
I would purposely position myself so that if I rolled the fireball, it would kill the party.
Yeah, we haven't been hit by a fireball, but there was one where I think I ended up taking like 20 damage from him, like 20 necrotic damage or something.
I was so upset that I never got a chance to have that thing proc and do something really crazy, and it made me sad. But he offered to be like, okay, well, every time you roll and nothing procs, you can always just degrade the die down one until it happens. So it was like six times. If it doesn't happen, it automatically procs. And it's like, no, I'll keep it raw for a little while and see what happens. And
yeah, like
I never procced.
Yeah, I personally don't have a whole lot of experience with the sorcerers. I played one for a couple of game sessions with Storm King's Thunder, but I wasn't able to keep making the game session, so you know how that goes. Work, life, everything. Honestly, I don't even know if the group ever finished running it.
So back on the awesome world of creating magic items, we spent the past 2 weeks or so creating magic items for our LARP.
Yep.
What advice do you have for people making magic items? Since that was a conversation that happened a lot.
Don't. Off the top of my head, I would say don't do it. truthfully, when it comes to creating magic items, shoot low. It's honestly way better for game balance to give a underpowered magic item than an overpowered one. I, in my own D&D campaign, don't stress over it because my players all understand that if I'm giving you a magic item I've created, I may pull that thing. Even then, I generally shoot for low-powered magic items. If you want your campaign to be incredibly high-powered, or if the campaign is based around this legendary item that you're creating, then go for broke. Throw whatever you want out there. It is your campaign. Only you can really ruin it. So.
And it was funny because we were talking. I was working with the new player group tonight, and our good friend Kevin was there, and he said that when people ever give him a magic item list for the LARP game, is either the items are extremely all underpowered, or they are insanely overpowered, and there's never a middle ground.
Yeah, you've been working with me on this for the past couple of weeks for the LARP. And especially, it's way less of a problem if you screw up in a D&D game. If you screw up in a LARP, that's a problem. So it's definitely better to underpower items in that scenario. And as you have seen, like I've been doing this for a very, very long time, the whole LARP scenario, you'll toss really good items at me, and I will intentionally underpower them. Just because I am concerned with them being broken within the game.
Yeah, and I had to convince you to just put things a little bit higher because, I kind of feel like Kevin would actually check and balance us more.
We also have that, the fact that he is sort of that checks and balances. We can throw stuff at him and he'll say yes or no. And then if it ends up overpowered, well, that's not on us.
Yeah, it will be.
No, it won't because it had to go through him. So. But yeah, I really, really do love creating my own magic items. And I love creating the history and the story behind them. And this is another thing that kind of flows in line with what we've been discussing with the whole LARP. Is like Kevin, he likes to have a story behind the magic items that are coming out into the game a lot of the time. And when it comes to D&D, or any role-playing game, I really do prefer to have some sort of a history or a story. Who did this belong to? How was this created? What plane is this from? How old is this item? So, like, my entire campaign world that I've been running is the country that the players are based in is an old world. Think most of the world is America, and this country is Europe. So it has a very, very long, old history. So much that's been forgotten over time. So all of these items that they're coming across used to belong to some elven lord or some wizard from 2,000 years ago. And digging into that history is part of the fun of the game.
Yeah, like I said, I tried my kind of same hand at that with a couple of items that we made, giving them some kind of history or purpose, like where would this item have come from and who would have used it.
Forgotten Realms is specifically, I know you're talking about the other one, but Forgotten Realms is specifically massively, there's so much history in that game because the game's been around for 40 years.
Yeah. I try to incorporate some things in my characters. I think I'm better at that when it comes to the history. Because I don't know much of it, and I haven't run my own homebrew campaign, but when I do that, it's going to be a lot of magic items that are going to be very, very intricate to the setting that they're in.
Yep.
I kind of prefer the Dark Sun ideal of magic and magic items just doesn't exist, or so very extremely rare that when you find one, it's almost. When you find that +1 sword, it's almost entirely game breaking.
Yeah, Dark Sun was pretty hefty about not handing out magic items. There was even it was a low magic campaign, not quite to the extent that Conan is, but it was definitely low magic.
Yeah.
But also, that being said, every single thing in that game had psionics except for I think mules. So
That's true.
it just sort of supplemented Magic with psionics.
Yeah, it definitely happens. But I really like that kind of setting, and in the homebrew campaign that I've been building, I kind of ran with that that idea that there really aren't any magic items, and when you find that +3 Holy Scepter, Dragon's Bane Scepter, it's meant specifically to kill that legendary dragon that's been scouring the land forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the next campaign that I run after I finish up with the Star Wars game that I'm doing it's going to be on the same world that I normally run on, but I'm going to run it in a different country. It's going to be the Dragonlands, which is nothing but barbarians. So I'm going to actually make it a low magic campaign. There's not going to be any wizards or sorcerers or anything like that. Just to see. I want that Conan feel to it.
Yeah, and that's kind of why too. Like I in my home campaign, I've kind of like limited magic characters like as a choice. Like, yeah, you can still be a wizard, but all of your spells have to be fire or oil or grease based, because that is the only component that you have that has any kind of magical essence for you to use. So no ice, no, maybe thunder.
Yeah, you're not getting Big B's hand.
Right. No bags of holding.
No magic mansions.
Yeah. And like, for Two of Annihilation, I let the players go crazy. Like, hey, you have the level 10 default per the Dungeon Master Guide with magic items. So you have 5,000 gold plus 2 common items. Or 2 uncommon items. So you can buy uncommon items at max price, which is 500 gold. So everybody has spider climb boots. Everybody has a bag of holding.
Yeah.
Everybody has a necklace of adaptation.
Yeah, this was literally my last campaign because they were in the center of the world as it was. Like they had access to nearly anything. They got to a point where I was like, okay, any rare or under magic item, you could just buy it. I'll give you the price, and I had a price list for a lot of the stuff. And any very rare items, ask me about it, because some of those I'm just not going to hand out unless you have 100,000 gold to burn or something. But and legendaries, you can never buy those. But after a while, it's like, yes, every single person has the rings of protection +1 and the cloaks of whatever because they can afford it.
It's really breaking in 5e too, from what I've been experiencing. It's almost like if they had the Dark Sun mentality in 5e, that most of the monsters would be the challenge that they're supposed to be. Because, like I think we've discussed before, like every monster has, half damage from any non-magical source. But who doesn't have a magical weapon by level 3?
Well, it is not game breaking in 5th edition. It is game breaking in a campaign that allows it. Yeah. If I did not allow them to buy magic items, and as the DM, you completely have that option. If you don't let them buy magic items, you don't have to worry about that. I intentionally was running a high magic campaign, and I was okay with that. Everything that they could throw at me, I could throw it back just as hard.
Right. And I think what happened with us is that, I'm trying to stick to the tomb and not change anything of what's in there. But because of that, they have the items that are making it a little bit easier. But then again, half the party did die last session.
Yeah, so, like it may be unbalanced in the written campaign stuff, Tomb of Annihilation and Storm King's Thunder and so forth. Like I don't really know because I haven't played a lot with those. I only really tend to play homebrews and run homebrew stuff, that's what D&D has always been to me.
Yeah.
Like I've run Dragonlance and Forgotten Realms and Dark Sun, but those were never the core of what I was doing. Like I've always just created my own stuff.
Yeah, I've always had people who enjoy the actual world. Like my wife is a huge Dritz fan, so she wanted to be in Forgotten Realms. She wanted to experience what it was to be a drow in this scenario. and to the degree of like, well, I don't know everything about Drow, so you're gonna have to help me with some of the, I have the base and little.
Shit, all you had to do is ask me. I've read all the books.
Right. So I'm asking her, okay, you're gonna have to tell me what the religious ceremony for the high priestess are because I don't know. And so I'm sitting there in her first, session 0 session, like, okay, explain to me how you go about this religious ceremony with Lolth. She's like, all right, well, first I have all the male drow leave the room, and I seal the door. I'm like, all right, sounds about right to me so far. All right, so then I strip naked. Sorry, what? It's like, yeah,
yeah.
They're always naked whenever they do the ceremony. I'm like, oh, okay. So
there will be a sacrifice before this is over. You can be sure of that. So, and it's going to be something sentient.
So she kind of went on and explained the whole thing, and I trust my players.
That's your first mistake.
And
I'm kidding.
So she's explaining the whole thing, and I'm like, okay. Great. All right, you're done. All right, roll for your religious ceremony.
Yep. Yeah, that is one of the problems with running campaigns and worlds that are well established. So I'm running this Star Wars game, and I'm having to be very kind of cautious as to where I run it, because it is taking place during the Star Wars movie, like right in that time period. So I'm having to run it outside of all of that. I'm actually running it around the hut worlds. But even then, there's I'm sure there are people out there who've read every freaking Star Wars book and comic and everything else, and would tell me, no, at this time period, this was happening on Nar Shaddaa, and so forth. And I'm just trying to avoid all of that. Because there are always going to be people who know more about a setting than you do, unless it's your own setting.
Right.
Which is the reason I like running my own stuff, because I can do what I want with it and change it as I feel I need to.
Yep, and that works, and that's why we have the tables to make magic items at our own whim. And like I said, overall, I think I've enjoyed making the ones I did. I just don't want to make any more. There are plenty in the book that I can just do a quick search on and help pull them up in D&D Beyond. Efficiency over being lazy, I guess.
Yeah. One thing that would also help, like, my problem is I know every magic item that's in that DM's guide, but conveniently there's the DM's guild. So if I really feel like I want more magic items and I don't want to create them myself, I am sure I can go on there, pay $3, and just download another 100 or 200 magic items.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Some of them might not be balanced, but it's also my discretion if I ever put them in my game.
Yeah, and that's something that I've always hoped, happens is, if I do make a magic item, that it's actually well balanced and well thought out, not too crazy, not too game breaking, and, the players have a fun time with it. And like I said, I think my wife has enjoyed her Lolth blessing that she has.
Yeah. It's a nice little trinket that's not game breaking by any means.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what I strive for. And like I said, your comment of always having a story to an item that I think is very important.
Yeah, players love that. Like it just adds so much flavor to it. It makes them feel the world more so.
And so, if you are a player and you receive a custom magic item, then just go, oh, okay, that's neat.
Yeah. Oh, it's so weak. It's underpowered. Don't do that. Be thankful that you got something. You got DM attention. Anyway, on that note, I think that's about enough for this week.
Yeah, pretty much. Craig?
See you next time. Bye, Craig.
Stop recording us, Craig. We know you're doing it. Stop. Go away. Bye.